Now for our roundtable with Anna Mancuso, Republican political strategist, and News Channel 5 political analyst Brian Crowley. We're going to move on to the Democrats and the debates and who's moving the needle. But briefly, our very eloquent millennial political activist, talking about impeachment, you came away with the sense that it's not really moving the needle either way, and that's not presuming what will be the outcome either way. Mariana? Surprised a bit, or what's your general view?
No, I'm not surprised, because right now with the impeachment, they have a marketing problem. With Nixon and Clinton, it was really easy. We could wrap our minds around Clinton had an affair with an intern. Nixon broke into Watergate when he was running for re-election. Those are very easy, digestible pieces, and this is kind of difficult and cumbersome, and so we have to figure out the shock and awe moment, and there's not, a smoking gun.
Who said what about Ukraine? How does it tie in? Is there a quid pro quo? Brian, same question.
Well, I mean, I don't think very many people are actually watching the hearings in the great scheme of television viewing, and I'm not surprised that that both Alexander and Caroline agreed with the impeachment, and that's not a good sign for the Democrats in the impeachment. You've got to have a lot of public support for these things, and I don't think the Democrats have handled it well.
In what sense?
Well, I mean, part of the problem is it is true, the Republican talking point, that some of these Democrats, Adam Schiff being number one, have talked for years about wanting to impeach the president and how evil he is and all that. So he's sort of also sitting there as the lead juror in the case, and
that he already prejudged in many people's
and so our sense of fairness is there. Now, I will also say that some of the things that the Republicans have said on that committee have been absolutely outrageous, and I can't remember the doctor's name who's on the committee, but he talked about, in very harsh militaristic tones, about this being a coup, and we should watch out for this kind of coup of the president. And I just cringed when I heard that kind of language. So, I mean, I think both sides need to go have a beer.
Right, and to Brian's point, the reason why Watergate and the impeachment of Nixon, or the attempted to impeach Nixon, was so successful is because they were able to tear support away from Nixon.
Right.
And that is the hurdle that the Democrats will have to try and jump over in order for this to even have any litmus of success, especially looking into 2020 for them.
There were Republicans in the Watergate era. You began to peel away on that hill, and certainly out in the heartland and across America began to peel that away.
I want to add, I don't have any doubt that in one way or another, Giuliani was doing exactly what Trump wanted him to do. I think that Trump has been in the business long enough of kind of skirting the edges, where he doesn't flat out necessarily say to whoever, like Michael Cohen and Stormy Daniels, there's no tape of him flat out saying anything about Stormy Daniels to Michael Cohen. But when you listen to, I think Trump has a way of conveying to people around him who are loyal to him what he wants, and they get it done. And
Interesting, and not for us to presume on which way it will go, and the House now heads to the Judiciary Committee, and then ultimately, if articles of impeachment were voted on and he was impeached, would go to the Senate for trial, where Republicans hold sway. We'll all, like you, have to see how that plays out, and all of you, as I know from emails, we get lots of views on a topic that has the country, like so much else, polarized on what they're hearing and what it means or what it doesn't mean. Let's move on to Democrats in the debate, those who would like to take on President Trump in 2020. Your sense through all the debates we've had now and where we stand, because as we get ready to start heading toward caucus and primary season, Mariana, it doesn't seem like there's a clear-cut leader among the Democrats.
Not
Your sense of it all.
Wednesday. No, after Wednesday night, there was no clear front runner. I will tell you that it looked like the wheels were coming off Joe Biden's candidacy. He seemed to. Well, he was getting a little tired. Maybe it was past his bedtime. But in full disclosure, it was past my bedtime, too, when it ended. So I think that when we looked at...
How do you feel it's coming off?
Because he's having these gaffes. These gaffes are gotcha moments that he's instilling in himself. People aren't even having to tee him up to have those moments. He's literally just doing it himself. And we're seeing that, as we saw earlier in our first panel, there were not a lot of attacks of each other. There was talk about issues, which was substantive. However, again, 10 people on the stage, 2 hours, that was a lot.
But here was interesting to me, Brian, at least for the millennials, and it seems to be a larger calculus Democrats are having. The millennials are saying, the Joe Biden candidacy, not doing a lot for me. But then you heard her in the very next sentence say, but we feel that if we want to win, we need a moderate, and at least right now, that would appear to be Joe Biden. So the factor versus can we overcome that and get people off the couch and go to vote. I thought there was an interesting, and she acknowledged, disconnect there. Your take.
Well, in the danger of repeating myself, in a lot of ways, these debates are irrelevant. The nominees are going to be decided by Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, and Nevada. At least the final 3 or 4 candidates, at the very minimum, will have reduced most of these people by the time those 4 primaries are done. If we get past Super Tuesday and wind up in Florida, then Florida will have a very strong stake in picking them out. And I don't think so then from that group, we'll decide whether or not there's somebody moderate or less than moderate that the party wants to pick. I think there's a generational issue that they identified very, very well, because younger people want somebody that seems more exciting and more dynamic.
But as she said, who also can win.
Who can also win, and that's I think part of the reason why Mayor Pete looks good to some of these folks, because he's young, he's dynamic,
feels a little more
and he's
moderate.
also a bit of a moderate.
Yep. And ultimately, the next year, it seems like it's boiling down, as it always does, to the pocketbook. How's the economy doing for you? And as a big part of the economy, health care, because the Medicare for All debate will certainly be front and center. Let's get away from the horse race that we're all accused of following too closely. Issues-wise, what will hold sway for the most part next year, barring things that we can't predict without a crystal ball? Mariana?
Right. Well, I've got a magic 8 ball at home.
There you go. Bring it in.
On a regular
Bring it in.
basis.
Yeah.
I think that people are going to be looking to healthcare. They're going to look at climate crisis. That is actually getting a lot of playtime.
More traction.
Absolutely. As well as those things that are affecting their bottom line, the economy. How are they, one of the things that we saw in the debate on Wednesday was the ask of farmer subsidies. Are those farmers going to want to be beholden to that? Are they going to have to, are they going to be voting with their pocketbook? Heck yes.
In the main, the economy right now would be a big Trump positive. Unemployment at 50-year lows, and people feeling like they do have, in many cases, not all, more money in their pocket. And in fact, his team has said, we're running all in on the economy in 2020. Your take on the issues as they shake out for voters?
I think there's issues still developing, and I think the economy still has the potential to be a huge one in the next election. And there was a story on Friday, and I don't remember off the top of my head the big, gigantic firms, but as an example, it would be a firm the size of Walmart. And they're telling the small businesses that supply them that they can't pass on the cost of the tariffs, the 25% tariffs that they're paying. The small businesses are saying they're going out of business because they can't afford to pay the entire tariff themselves. So I think some of the impact of the tariffs and everything else that may hit the economy, which you see happening to the farmers and to agriculture, I think there's a lot of things under the surface there that are going to start bubbling up as we get into the election.
Republicans in the White House hold their breath that the economy will hold together. Their critics say they're their own worst enemy with the tariff war with China on part of that. But as you always say, and as you do too, Mariana, pocketbook issues will hold sway. And the health care debate's going to be interesting because it's so clear. Medicare for all versus private health insurance, and even the Democrats can't agree. Quick closing comment before your closing comments that will come up after the break. 10 seconds.
Well, I think that Joe Biden, I'm going to predict that Joe Biden may not make it to the finals.
Okay. Mariana?
I think that there's going to be a lot of questioning of candidacy over Thanksgiving from Joe Biden. I think that you're also going to see Kamala Harris have to do some soul searching, as well as Klobuchar, and Mayor Pete's just going to keep holding steady, and he could surprise us all in Iowa.
We'll be back in just a moment. Interesting.